Hello everyone, and today's review is about this perfume here, Irisy by Teone Reinthal Natural Perfumery. But before we start talking about this perfume, I wanted to go into a little depth on what Iris actually is. Many people will say that Iris is a floral scent, but for me it never has been, because Iris actually comes from the root of the iris plant. It is not from the flowers, or certainly iris in perfumery. Most species of iris that are used in perfumery, the flowers themselves yield very little scent at all. So iris as a smell can have many different facets. It can smell earthy, woody, powdery, carrot-like. It can have some violet-like nuances because the chemical makeup of iris has irones, and they are from the same family as ionones, and it's ionones that give violet their scent. So they are very much linked, and that's why some people will pick out violet nuances, and that's why iris and violet work so well together, because really they are sisters. The scent can also be somewhat skin-like, it can be suede-like, and it has fixative properties. So it helps a perfume to stay longer and be noticeable for longer on the skin. So the root of the iris is called the rhizome, and that has to be left between 3 and 6 years to dry, and then it will usually be steam distilled, although I think there are other methods as well for extracting the iris butter from it. There are 3 main iris breeds that are used in perfumery. The most common being Iris pallida, which has the mauve flowers. There's also Iris germanica, which has a strong purple colour, and the Iris florentina, which has the white flowers. I'm a big fan of iris in perfumery. I really enjoy the soft, powdery facets. I really love violet, and I love how iris and violet play together. I enjoy the way it can be used in many different ways. Some iris fragrances will take on lipsticky, makeup-y feel. The reason that the connection is made between makeup and lipstick with iris is it's actually an ingredient that's been used in those cosmetics for many, many, many years. Hence why people, when they smell an irisy fragrance, may well get that scent connection with a lipstick or powder that they're familiar with. So let's move on to the fragrance that we're talking about today, and that is Irisy. I have it here in a 10ml scent pencil, and as you can see, I've made a fair dent, considering I've only had it a few days, but I've been studying this one because I find it fascinating. Irisy opens up with you can smell a fluffy iris, very pillowy, but there's also a little bit of freshness. There is bergamot in here. I'll give you the notes. It's bergamot, jasmine, cedar, Orris, which is the another way of saying iris. It's a more correct way because Orris is referring to the root of the iris. Violet leaf, oak moss, labdanum, patchouli, and Mysore sandalwood. So as I say, it opens up with this lovely fluffy iris. It's pillowy, a little bit fresh from the bergamot. There's a bit of sharpness as well, possibly from the bergamot, maybe from the violet leaf. It's got a musky, kind of clean, not exactly laundry, but airing laundry musk. Laundry drying outside in the countryside kind of scent. But this lovely fluffy irisy musk is sitting on a much darker base, a darker accord of woods, resin, patchouli. It's pretty, but it's unusual. It's dark and light. There's a mysterious feel to it. I feel like I get the exterior of a marshmallow a little bit. So if you imagine a marshmallow and you cut the outside off and you just take the outside, that fluffy with the powdered sugar, that texture, but much less sugar, much less sugar. It's a pretty scent, but it is unusual. It's not going to be for everyone, this fragrance. It's not a typical girly iris and sort of violet, iris, violet, rose combination. There's no rose in here. But it's not that girly lipstick, handbag kind of scent at all. It just has hints of that in a much more complex composition. The base, although it's darker, it's not gothically dark. It just gives it depth and complexity. It has rather an outdoors-like nature, and I sense shades of brown as it wears on my skin, very natural shades of brown. The violet leaf in here does lend it some sort of green, sharp, violet-y nuances. I feel more of the leaf than the violet, really. It's not a particularly violet-y scent. There's just a hint of that in there. There is a lovely jasmine in here, but it is not a big, bold jasmine that takes over the scent, but rather melds with the iris and the darker base, I guess, to just give it a slightly heady feel. But that does, over time, slowly subside, and as you wear this fragrance, the notes kind of gently move around, so it's not a linear scent at all, and eventually you have this translucent, powdery, woody, lightly sweet fragrance with the merest hint of green. And the labdanum I don't really pick out until the far dry down, about 6 hours or so in, although it's certainly doing the supporting role from a much earlier point. But for me to specifically say, yes, that's labdanum, takes about 6 hours of wear. Now, there was a note in here that really had me guessing and researching as to what it might be. What it was I was picking out. So when you get to the far dry down, there is this note which to me smelled a bit like a rooty vetiver, and I recognise it from two other perfumes. It's in the far dry down of Francesca Bianchi's The Lover's Tale, and it's also in the far dry down of Tobacco Rose by Papillon. So I looked up the notes on all of these fragrances, and I believe that I'm smelling oak moss. This is not a note I've really ever been able to specifically pick out, because I've always just assumed it's added a green nuance to a fragrance and some longevity trickery. But I'm now fairly confident that it is the oak moss that you really smell in the far dry down, and it's quite prominent. And it lasts and lasts and lasts. And I think that's probably what gives this fragrance such long-lasting skill on the skin, because this lasts 12 hours plus. Although the far dry down is mostly dominated by this oak moss, which to me, as I say, it smells kind of rooty, a little bit green, a little bit like a dark woodsiness. And at this point, then the prettiness of the florals, the jasmine, and the soft fluffiness of the iris have mostly disappeared, or perhaps oak moss has simply overtaken them. I think this is a stunning composition and something that all lovers of iris should try if you have the chance to. That's my review of Irises. I really do hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in another video.